Before my channel got successful, my mental health was I've gone from being a very anxious and tired person to...
What advice would you give to someone who can't discern between their intuition and just everyday anxiety?
I think I honestly attribute my success the most to the timing that I started, because
we often think that, well, I don't know what we often think. So yeah, what do you think about what I just said? Okay, tell us about, so I think let's try to kind of walk through.
You are now in the element, where we dive into raw stories and vibrant journeys that shape who we are. Let's get in the element.
Welcome.
Hi.
I'm so happy you're here.
I'm so happy you're doing this.
Me too. I've been waiting to bring on Carey for months now. She actually came to Canada and I was like, why not record in person?
How long ago was it when you called me with this idea?
I think it was a couple months ago. And I'm not just saying this, you were truly one of the people that inspired me to do this.
I admire how serious you got about it. Like, you mean business. You're getting into it.
I'm a Capricorn.
You're a Capricorn, and I love that for you.
Okay, so I've known Carey for a really long time, and I would refer to you as that friend who just left on exchange and never came back.
Yes, precisely.
So I just remember wondering, is she coming back? And you never came back.
No, I didn't. Actually, I was gonna go on exchange in high school, and then it didn't work out. And so my revenge was university during the 2011 earthquake and stuff.
Oh.
And I was really worried about radiation. So yeah, I couldn't go.
If anyone's curious, Anna's her mom.
Yeah.
We love Anna.
Wait, not me laughing about radiation. She let me go to Japan the year after, but she made me bring a dropper of iodine, and I had to like take it with my meals and stuff. So I would go out with my friends for lunch or dinner or whatever, and I'd like, pull it out of my bag, and they'd be like, what's that? Like my Japanese friends. And I'd be like, it's iodine because of the radiation. And they're like, oh, we're not worried about that.
What does iodine do?
I guess the radiation with your thyroid function.
Okay, we can't say
It like lowers the vibration of your thyroid.
2 hours later.
Can you talk a bit about your upbringing? How did you identify within your family?
So I did feel like the black sheep of my family, which I think is something that many people in the collective who watch my videos, I think, also kind of have that feeling. And that's not to say that I wasn't supported by my family. I just think that I kind of had eccentric interests. I was always, like, when I was super little, I was very creative, but kind of bossy about it. I had all these ideas of the games I wanted to play and the stories I wanted to tell. And so when I was playing with my mom, I'd be like, okay, so this is what we're doing, and now you have to say this. And I would control the whole script. And then I kind of chilled out when I got older.
So I've known you since we were 9, 10?
I was 10 and you were 9. You're my oldest friend.
You used to create these characters and personas, and Carey was super popular. Like, she was actually
No, I
cool.
wasn't.
You were
What?
cool. In our class of middle school, you were actually cool.
Like,
you had
that's
like
not...
7 people surrounding you, and you were their queen.
It's true.
You were also an artist. You would draw some insane
My
things.
mom says that a lot, and I like don't.
Do you remember what you used to draw?
Yeah, but I don't think it was good.
You were drawing anime in middle school. Like, really good anime.
I don't think it was that good, though.
I actually think it was pretty good. I wish I had the
Thank you for
evidence.
saying-
Like, I still have a photo that Carey drew of me with an anime character in, like, my parents' house. I wish I brought
Did I
it.
draw that in your parents' house?
I don't remember where you drew it. I just remember you signed it, and it was, like, 2009. And it was such a good photo, and I looked so good. I had, like, the side bangs. I was just looked like such a cool anime character. So I just remember that. Okay, so you're very imaginative, very creative. Do you remember some of the stuff you were up to at the time, like middle school?
I was drawing. I like to write stories or write books. I don't think I ever really finished one. But then I always liked making songs.
So when did you start making music?
The first song I remember recording, I think was like 8. And then When I was 10, my dad got us a MacBook, and that's when I really started to get into pop music and electronic music, and I would try to make my own songs on the MacBook. I would just be in my room for hours.
Like, when I think of GarageBand, I think of you. You were on GarageBand. Like, it was your job at 12 years old.
I was making my little beats. I wouldn't say they were mixed very well because I didn't really know what I was doing in terms of using the software. I would post videos of me talking, and then I would post my music there and on SoundCloud.
And so you're still making music today?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to talk a bit about Japanese. How many languages do you know?
At this point, I can communicate in 2 languages, English and Japanese. I'm not really confident in my French anymore. Yeah.
But I think that's a product of your environment because you've been living in Japan for now.
Yeah. As
How
soon
many
as
years?
I moved to Japan, it went out the window. This year will be 9
Wow.
years. Yeah, this September.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So I think that makes sense. You're not really practicing your French in Japan.
Yeah,
so.
exactly. I think I started when I was 9 or 10, but it was still pretty casual. But then when I was 12, 13, I really kicked it into high gear. And I had a poster in my room of all the characters, like all the kanji. There's like 2,000 of them, like the commonly used ones. And I wanted to learn all of them. And I would put a check mark when I learned one. And almost every day I would make my mom test me. So I would give her the list and she would read off the word. And I would check it myself after. But now we have like apps to do that, right? But back in the day, we didn't have that. So, Mom, can you help me practice my kanji? And like, God bless her, she would just read all the words out. And I would just write it over and over and over and over. I was obsessed with that because I wanted to be able to read magazines and read books and stuff. And I feel like I didn't really learn how to speak until later. Because reading and writing is like a whole other ballpark than actually being able to speak in real life.
Yeah, and like engage in a conversation.
Yeah, yeah.
So, okay, so you mentioned wanting to read magazines, but what was your primary reason for learning Japanese?
There was a few different things. I think that I honestly don't know what came first, but there was a couple video games. So, you know, there's X3, which is a snowboarding game. And there's different characters that you can pick. And one of them was called Kaori. She's like a Japanese character. But I didn't know she was Japanese at the time. I just picked her because I'm like, oh, pretty girl. I was playing with her and obviously I can tell she's not speaking English because the characters would speak. But I didn't know until like in the game they're talking about how she's Japanese. And I was like, oh, cool. And then the other game is called Katamari. And my sister introduced me to that too. She saw it on TV. And it's a Japanese game that was translated into English, but all of the music in it was still Japanese. And so while you're playing it, you're just hearing someone sing in Japanese the whole time. So I think I started to be like, okay, this language is kind of vibes. And in grade 4, my sister's friend, you know, back in the day, we would burn CDs, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I have this visceral memory of standing in front of the school and my sister's friend being like, I burned this CD for you. And I don't know why. Maybe it's because I was already playing the games and into Japanese. And she gave me Gwen Stefani's, like her first solo album, which is when she had her whole like Harajuku Girls situation going on. And so if you've ever listened to that album, it's like Gwen Stefani singing, but then the Harajuku Girls will just ad-lib in Japanese. And that's what really I started to get obsessed with Harajuku and the fashion and wanting to learn the language.
Can you explain what Harajuku is to those that don't know?
So it's just a part of Tokyo. And a long time ago, well, what is this, like 2003, 2004? Back then, the fashion was really over the top, super colorful. And so I feel like it was kind of this hub where people could express themselves in a kind of homogenous culture. You could go there and dress crazy. And it was famous for the street fashion. Like it was really just so creative. And so I guess like Gwen Stefani thought so too.
So I guess for those that are looking to pursue different passions and interests in the way that you've done it, what kind of advice would you give them to have the courage to look outside of their environment?
It's really interesting to answer this question for you because there was a period at the beginning of my journey in my early 20s. I did a 1-year exchange at a Japanese university. When that year ended, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I just knew that I wanted to stay in Japan. And there was a period where I was trying to do the whole foreigner talent I joined an agency for foreigners in Japan, and I would be going to all these auditions for modeling gigs and TV gigs, but it wasn't really taking off. And so I do remember, like, during that period of my life, my family was kind of uneasy. You know, the reactions would be anywhere from, oh, that's interesting. Well, you know, everybody has their own journey, but as long as you have a backup plan, which I didn't, to straight up being like, what you're doing is dumb. Like, I'm not proud of you kind of thing. I got it kind of all over the spectrum. During that period, my friends, where we're from, I think a lot of people end up working for the government and like proper corporate jobs. And there were some times where relatives would be like, why don't you just do that? You'll get a nice schedule. You'll get off at 4 p.m. and you'll get weekends off and you'll get benefits. And so I did often feel that pressure of, why can't I just do what everyone else is doing? You know? That's how I felt at that time. I felt inferior of like, why can't I just follow that conventional path? Which now looking back, I'm like, girl, you were 21. Who cares?
Yeah. I don't think anyone at 21 was confident about their path. To know exactly what you're going to do from a very young age, I think it's just not realistic for most.
But that's not how I saw it. When I looked at my peers who were working in their proper corporate jobs, I was like, oh, that's someone who knows what they're doing. That's someone who has a plan. And it was only years later that some people realized that it's not for them. And again, it's not to say that any path is better or worse, but just that for people who are scared to pursue the path they're passionate about, those people you compare yourself to, or those people you think you should be living like, you don't know how they feel about their own path. You don't know enough about other people's journeys. Like, how many people living the conventional life, so to speak, don't like it or wish that they could do something else. And that's who you say you should be like? Like, what is that? Like, why? Does that make sense?
No, it makes a lot of sense because I think a lot of people choose certain career paths because they think it gives them a higher status, right? Some people value status. Other people value fulfillment or like pursuing their passion. So you might be super happy, you know, doing what you're doing, but I know people who, if you ask them to pursue something so ambiguous and different, they would be terrified and wouldn't thrive in that environment because they are just not wired that way.
I'm thinking of, you know, when a bunch of people jaywalk at the same time and then it's not scary?
Yes.
If it's risky, but if a lot of people are doing it and you know that you're not alone, it's less scary. And I feel like when you betray yourself to take the more like tried and true conventional path when that's really not what you want to do, like you're becoming someone that other black sheep like you will then look to and say, oh, well, most people are doing this. I should do that too. I don't want to betray myself and then inspire other people to betray themselves because I'm just adding more data points to the conventional path. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So I think with social media, it's given people the confidence to explore alternative paths, I think, because the beauty is that you're seeing all these niche creators and a lot of times we might associate ourselves with those people and kind of see ourselves in that person. Maybe you see some traits that remind you of yourself, and that I feel can give people courage to explore that, right? Because it's like, if they can do it, why not me?
It's like the narrative is less controlled when everyone can share their own journey.
Yeah.
And having that exposure to different ways of living, like I guess representation, right? It's so important.
When you first moved to Japan, what were some of those initial culture shock moments?
Okay, there's a few culture shocks because of how precise and rule following they are. So, for example, in Canada, if you go to the grocery store or like convenience store, if you were paying with cash and you were, I don't know, like 5 cents short, they would just be like, whatever. Like they wouldn't care. And so when I was in Japan, I had this experience of going to 7-Eleven and I was 1 cent short and I didn't think anything of it. And the guy just stood there and he was like, you owe me 1 yen.
Oh my God.
They follow rules even when it doesn't make sense. Like it could be like 3 a.m. There's no cars on the road. The crosswalk is like 6 feet and they will wait at the red light kind of thing.
Once you explained to me that when you first got there, you'd get on the train and people were very quiet.
Yeah, it's quiet. which now I'm used to. So if I got on a train or a bus in Canada and people are talking, I'll be like, oh, you're so annoying. Or talking on the phone on the train pisses me off. It's a lot of things that I used to be annoyed about, but now I'm used to it.
Yeah. You've adapted to that culture, and now the opposite feels weird. Mm-hmm. So you moved to Japan in university. When did you start to feel like Japan was more your home than Canada?
Oh, I
If at all.
felt that like from a really long time, because I visited for the first time at 13 and I was just like, yep, that's it. This is it. This is my place. And I don't really know why specifically. It's just like, I've tried to explain it to people, but it's just like something in the air that feels very, very familiar.
Mm-hmm. So we actually talked about this earlier. So Japan is more of a collective society, but people are still very self-oriented. So can you explain what your experience has been with that?
So I want to keep in mind that I've only lived in Tokyo, and I have heard from people who are not from Tokyo who say not all of Japan is like this. So it might just be a big city thing, you know, where there's a bit more of a disconnected or
Everything's
like
a rush.
or like a cold. Yes. And it feels more like cold sometimes, which like I don't mind because I keep to myself.
Yeah,
you know, I'm like, good, don't perceive me. But yeah, I feel like in the West we're more individualist and we want to stand out and we want to make our own identity.
What are some of the things you've seen that feel like people think of the group versus the individual?
For example, not taking your paid vacation days because you're going to inconvenience your coworkers, even though you're entitled to that. I just think there's so much pressure to not inconvenience anyone, to the point where sometimes it can impede on honest and intimate communication. Even with a significant other, I feel dissatisfied about this and that in my relationship, but if I bring it up, it's going to make my significant other feel bad. So you just you don't communicate it. And since we live in the culture where you don't talk about being pissed, I'm supposed to be able to like read between the lines and gauge that you're upset about something.
Whereas in North America, we kind of over-explain, I feel sometimes.
Yeah, like
which can also be a hindrance. Have you ever considered leaving Japan, like moving back or moving somewhere else?
I've considered it with my head, but realistically, I don't think my heart would let me. Like I always get drawn back.
Yeah, you couldn't bring yourself to actually take any action towards moving back. Okay, so let's talk about tarot. You're a tarot reader, and that's your main job at the moment. What is tarot?
So my understanding is that it actually started out as playing cards, I think from Italy. And if I remember correctly, I read somewhere that people used to play it kind of like MASH. Like they would, you know, MASH when you live in like the mansion or the apartment, like they would kind of tell the story about your life. And the cards represented different people or different archetypes. And it was only later that it started to be used for divination. But tarot, it's very similar to Italian playing cards. I used to play games with my grandparents growing up with the Italian cards. And it's the same suits. It's like wands, like sticks, coins, swords. The major arcana all represent different archetypes. And it represents a journey that everybody goes through. And there's so much symbolism in every card that honestly, I'm not knowledgeable about all of it. But I feel like every element in the artwork is intentional and represents something. One thing I am familiar with is the astrological associations of them because that's what I'm into. And I feel like it makes it easier or adds another layer for me to interpret them.
So tarot cards first appeared in Europe in the late 14th century, primarily northern Italy, and the earliest surviving tarot card decks date back to the 15th century. So yeah,
Like they still exist.
Yeah. So they did start out as playing cards, right? And then people sort of evolved the practice a little bit and started using it for
Divination.
divination. And so basically tarot readings serve as a tool for introspection and helping people sort of, you know, interpret the situations in their lives. So how did you get into tarot reading?
So I was into astrology first. I think a lot of girls are into astrology. The reason I got into it is because there was like several people in my life that I was not getting along with, and they were the same sign. So
Wait,
I was like,
what sign is this? I
I
need to
don't
know.
want to say because I love all signs. All signs are beautiful, but it was Virgo and Scorpio.
Okay, so you started getting into tarot through astrology. Can you explain what the connection is?
Well, it's funny because at first I fully believed in astrology, but I did not believe in tarot because I guess I didn't really understand the concept of the universe and divine intelligence. And I believed in astrology because it was this predictable thing. It was like a cycle.
So we basically all have different signs based on where the planets were situated when we were born.
And everybody knows their sun sign. Well, most people know their sun sign, or that's the one that they're most familiar with. But you have a sign for every other celestial body. And so I think when I really started to get interested in astrology was when I learned about moon signs. So it's where the moon was when you were born. And when I read mine, I'm a Gemini moon. And then when I read that, it felt like it made so much more sense. And then it just kind of snowballed from there, and I started learning more and more about it. And so, the movement of the planets it's always following the same trajectory. And so that to me felt more believable than, oh, if you're doing a tarot reading, you're just shuffling cards. It's random.
Okay, so there was a system behind astrology, whereas with tarot, it was this intuitive, unclear outcome.
Yeah, to me it felt random because I guess I hadn't really connected the dots that the same intelligence that made the solar system is the same intelligence that shows you the cards you need to see. There was a period where I didn't believe in it. And then what made me believe in it is because I was still very into astrology and I was watching a lot of astrology videos. And then I got recommended the tarot one because I guess the algorithm was like, people who like astrology also like tarot. And it was a prediction for Aries. This is your month ahead for Aries. And I watched it. It was so accurate. And I got some personal readings from that person. And then I just got really into it. And so I had a different YouTube channel. And I kind of stopped posting on it because I wasn't feeling it anymore. And something just kept telling me to start a tarot channel. And I kind of ignored it for a while, for I don't know, maybe a few months or something, until I finally started it. And I honestly don't think I had much of a skill when I started, in the sense of I didn't really have a lot of a grasp on what the cards meant. Now that I've reached this point, I realize that's not really important because you're going to say what you were meant to say regardless. If I'm giving you a tarot reading, I need to receive the right cards to tell you the message you need to hear. But that might not be the same for another reader. They might need to see different cards to tell you what you need to hear based on how we will interpret it. So I believe that there's a higher power that determines what card will come out, so that me, with all of my knowledge, maybe biases, whatever, will tell you what you need to hear.
Okay, so the first input to tarot is sort of the universe, and then the second input is your own intuition and your own abilities to decipher what the card means. So can you talk about how you built this skill or this intuition to do tarot?
I definitely think I got better at talking, and I got better at elaborating, and I got better at just trusting my gut and saying stuff. Even if in my head I'm thinking this is weird or this doesn't make sense, I've gotten better at just ignoring that voice and just saying what is coming to my mind.
Yeah.
So I think it's just through doing it a lot and taking the feedback that you receive.
Because, it's one thing to practice, and it's another to get the validation from the viewers that what you're saying resonates. And even if it's imperfect of a practice, it still is resonating with people and still, I guess, having a positive impact. So
you have to remember, because I'm also a viewer, I watch them as well. And when I watch a video, I'm not expecting every single thing to be a message for me. I understand that there's a collective watching this and they need their messages too. And so I'm not going to judge the reader if they say something that doesn't apply to me.
Yeah.
I'll just be like, oh, that little tidbit was not for me. But then there's other nuggets in there that freak me out. You have to take what's for you.
even as a viewer, you have to use your intuition to pick out which things actually resonate with you.
What is actually for you.
Okay, so you got into tarot through astrology.
Yeah.
And you started your YouTube channel. So you said you started in 2019.
Yeah, it was May 26 in Canada, May 27 in Japan, I think.
Love it.
Yeah.
You were kind of a pioneer on YouTube for tarot, because it seems like at the time there weren't that many tarot readers on YouTube, and it sort of boomed in the last few years.
There were definitely pioneers who came before me. I think that in more recent years, tarot and just spirituality in general has really taken off. And so maybe it has made the field more saturated.
Because more people were seeking that type of content.
More people were seeking it out, more people were making it, which is awesome. I honestly attribute my success the most to the timing that I started, because it was 2019. So after I had been posting for a few months, then COVID happened. And so there's this combination of people are at home and they maybe have more time. And maybe because it's such an uncertain time, I think people also were seeking guidance.
A lot of people were self-reflecting in COVID because when you can't leave your house, you're sort of forced to be more introspective, I think.
Yeah, I noticed there's reflection about, do I actually want to go back to my normal life when this is all over?
What would you recommend to someone that wants to start a YouTube channel today?
It sounds so cheesy, but you just have to go for it. I think that we have a kind of interesting niche because, some people do show their face, but I think a lot of people don't. Like, they're just showing their hands and the cards. And people are really just coming to hear a message that resonates. So for example, if you're watching like a vlog or a commentary channel or something like that, you might be more picky about the viewing experience in terms of the quality of the camera or the quality of the audio. And that kind of keeps you watching. Whereas I think when it comes to tarot videos, it's really about the message, you know? We're not like putting on a show. We're just communicating from the heart something that you need to hear. If I'm listening to a reading and it's hitting, I'm not going to be like, it's bad quality video and audio, so like I'm going to click off. No, if it's hitting, it's hitting, and I'm going to listen to it. I don't care. I feel like it's more like intimate. It's more like we're connecting rather than just entertain me, show me something pretty. I think.
I think a lot of people are seeking an authentic experience. And like you said, it's not about the production necessarily.
Yes, it's not about the production value. And I used to do this, and a lot of people do it. You can make your own cards. So you don't have to spend a ton of money on buying fancy decks. And it's a nice like icing on the cake, but it's not going to make people resonate with you more or less. I never really felt pressure or self-doubt until it picked up. When you're in the early stages, you're kind of like, oh, no one's expecting anything from me anyway. Like, for example, in the early days, I would not post for a month and nobody cared because you know, but now if I don't post for a week, I'm like, I feel bad.
Because people will message you and be like, where's the video?
They'll be like, where have you been? Which it's fine, you know? But it's funny because you don't have a boss. So it's you who is just putting pressure on yourself. Okay, this is really non-spiritual, but I've heard that algorithms like YouTube and TikTok and stuff, they will let newer channels go viral because they've seen that the frequency that a channel posts before going viral versus after, once you go viral, you're like, oh, I want to maintain this now. So you start posting more consistently and that benefits them.
Oh.
So they will let these new people go viral because then they're like, oh, I'm doing well now. I have to keep this up. So maybe that happened to me and they got me. Yeah, because I went from posting every month to once or twice a week. And also I have more energy these days. When I was, before my channel got successful, my mental health was I was eating crap. My sleep schedule was crap. I was getting sick frequently. I just didn't take care of myself because I think I just didn't care. And so when I started to do well, I was like, I had something to look forward to, I guess, or something to really pour my heart into that I cared about. And then I started to kind of, okay, I'm my own boss now, so I have to create a routine. And I've gone from being just a very anxious and tired and half-assed person to just really like enthusiastic and hardworking. And of course, there's other factors, like probably just my age and being in a healthy relationship. But I think that the channel doing well really, 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 really changed my life for the better. Like when I really sit down and think about it, I'm like, I can't fathom it.
You get spotted. Like, you're cool.
It has happened a handful of times.
You've been spotted in different countries.
I have. I was spotted twice in Japan and once in the States.
That's impressive.
But yeah, it's like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
Do you think people are looking for guidance through these videos because they don't trust themselves or because they're afraid of making a mistake?
It depends. I think, because there's all kinds of people watching, right?
Yeah. But what message would you send to those people that have a lot of self-doubt or don't trust
Don't watch them.
themselves? Oh.
Stop. Because like, I've been there.
Okay.
And you can really get confused. And I think this, even if you take tarot out of the equation,
yeah.
if you are someone who just feels really lost and you have to make a life decision and you go to 3 friends for advice and they all say 3 different things, you have to pay attention to how you feel when each of those 3 friends are saying that thing. What does that feel like when you hear their words? Does that resonate with you? Any information you take in has to go through that internal guidance system. Because if you're on YouTube watching readings for hours a day, like I was at one point, you're going to hear all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. And you're not going to know what to filter out.
And if you're not filtering it, you're just going to get confused. It's not like healthy to be in. I really, really think it should just be used as confirmation and kind of being reminded of like when we went out the other night and you're just like, okay, I'm done. Let's go home. You have to be able to do that. Like when you're listening to a message, be like, oh no, that's not for me.
So the first thing that people need to do before going to tarot readings on YouTube is to ask themselves first, do I have a good internal compass when it comes to making decisions or like just my intuition in general?
Yeah, and I think a good reader should emphasize that. I think if you're an ethical reader, you should make it a priority to emphasize the importance of the viewer's intuition and doing what feels right for them.
Mm-hmm. I love that. That's actually really good advice. So can you explain a little bit what the intersection is between tarot and spirituality?
I feel like when I'm doing readings, it's very much my viewers' spirit guides who determine what the topic is going to be. So in that sense, I do think that what we do in our videos, it is very much linked to a belief in a higher power, but you don't have to use it in that way.
Do you have any beef with the spiritual community?
It's kind of what we were talking about before, how I do feel like part of our job to be an ethical reader is to really empower whoever is listening to us and reassure them, give them confirmation to trust their own internal guidance. So if you're approaching it from a perspective of, I know all of the answers because I have this special gift that you don't, and you need to come to me to get the answer. Creating that kind of power dynamic, I think, is not good. And luckily, I don't think there is a lot of that in our community. You know what I think it is? I think that in our language, the word spiritual has this connotation of being pure or ascended or virtuous, whereas it doesn't have to be those things. Like, I think everything we experience on this earth is spiritual. The highest of vibes and also the nastiest sludgy things, like it's all part of the spiritual experience. Yeah, all the high vibes and the low vibes. Yeah, so I guess, I don't know, maybe it's just a different way to define the word spiritual, because I do think it kind of carries that implication of you're enlightened and you have a really pure, but everybody's on a spiritual journey. What they choose to do with that is up to them.
So the essence of spirituality is in the everyday experience.
I think so.
And what we choose to do with that is
I
up to
think
us.
so. Because I think when you start to make it about transcending the everyday experience, it can become a bit like escapism. And also, it's not really fair to you, because if you put that pressure on yourself of, I'm not going to be judgmental, I'm not going to be petty, I'm not going to have negative thoughts, I'm not going to struggle, like, that's not realistic and it's not human. And then
You're not above the natural human experience.
yeah. And when you do have those low moments, you're going to feel like you're like failing on your spiritual journey.
Yeah.
And I think you have to strike that balance between striving to be the best version of yourself, but also giving yourself grace. You're a human, and throughout your whole life, you're going to experience all of the highest vibrations and the lowest vibrations. And the goal isn't just to get from low to high and stay there. You're going to be dancing through it in perpetuity.
It's acceptance of
Yes,
those,
it is.
of the ups and downs.
Acceptance, allowance, and like authenticity throughout your journey is the most important thing.
You being on that spiritual path, do you think that's helped you navigate all the ups and downs that you've experienced, get over the humps?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's really instilled in me this deep-seated feeling that everything's going to be okay. So that even when I'm going through rough or chaotic times in my life, I'm experiencing the discomfort and the pain, but there's also something even deeper than that. But everything is going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's at the root of everything that you're experiencing. We often hear that women have this sort of heightened intuition. Do you think that men can also achieve that?
Yeah. I kind of think that it might be like a social conditioning kind of thing. For example, we would say that women are more emotional, but that's more so because it's allowed. Like, I think men are just as emotional, but they're not really encouraged to or allowed to express it. And it might be the same thing with intuition, because it's been framed as this thing that is illogical. It's like woo-woo.
And we relate that to women.
Yes.
We all have our own sense of intuition, or we all have our gut. So what advice would you give to someone who can't discern between their intuition and just everyday anxiety?
Intuition is very gentle. You know, anxiety yells at you, and intuition is not like that. Intuition feels chill, and it speaks to you from a place of love. It's funny because, like, anxiety, it's very frenzied and loud, and it feels very urgent. And it could be that underneath that layer of anxiety, your intuition is saying the same thing. I got invited to a dinner, and just all hell broke loose. And I shouldn't have gone. My anxiety was like, don't go. And my intuition was like, it's probably a good idea if we don't go to that. Like, you know, it's like sometimes...
You had the loud and the not loud
sometimes they
voice.
are on the same page, but I think you still have to discern the voice of your intuition, because it's kind of like your body, you know? When I tap into the energy of my body, she's so chill.
Yeah.
She's like the girl you meet in the bathroom. She's like, hey girl, like, I'm just keeping you alive today. Like, we're doing amazing. And don't go to that dinner also. I just feel that she's so loving and calm. And so I would listen to that loving and calm voice. But it's hard to do if the voices who raised you were not loving and calm. If you were surrounded by the harsh, berating voices growing up, then you're going to think that's your intuition and that's the right thing to do.
But it's actually like an external voice that is not always helping you.
I think so.
Yeah. So how would one tap into that softer voice versus that loud, kind of frantic voice that is more anxiety driven? Like, I know a lot of people do meditation, a lot of people do breath work. I don't know what's worked for you.
I think so. For short-term solutions, if you're feeling really anxious and frazzled, and this is just my personal experience, I know people talk a lot about deep breathing, but sometimes I just stop breathing.
Wait, what?
Because when you're anxious, I think you hyperventilate. You don't have enough
Oxygen?
I think you don't have enough CO2 because you're just breathing it all out. Sometimes when I stop breathing, it calms me down a lot. Or just breathe really slow. Cold temperatures calms me down. There's a lot of things as a kid that I used to do intuitively to calm my anxiety. And then as an adult, I actually learned that everything I was doing was calming down my vagus nerve, which I didn't know what a vagus nerve was as a kid, but somehow I knew what to do to calm down that nerve. The other thing I do is I go like this.
You lift your feet up.
I kind of in my lower stomach and round my back and push my pelvis forward and push. And I learned that that's an actual thing. It's called bearing down. And it calms down your vagus nerve. And I never learned about that technique. It's just something that my body naturally did. So your body's wise. Your body knows what it's doing even when you don't know what you're doing. So those are more short-term things. But I think that in the long term, something that's really helpful for discerning your intuitive voice is investing energy into loving yourself and having healthy boundaries. Because a lot of the time, I think we hear our intuition, but we don't feel confident to actually listen. It's not that we don't know what it's saying. It's that we're like, is it okay if I act on that?
Yeah.
Am I allowed to act on that? It's sad. I feel like a lot of people are tapped into that voice, but then that anxious brain is like, you're just wishful thinking. You're just being delusional. It's like, give me a break. Can you just let me feel relaxed?
Yeah.
It's so silly.
What was the most shocking reading you've done for someone?
This is a really cool story that happened maybe a year ago. But I actually made a vlog because I went to visit my friends. They're a couple. They run Airbnb. So I went to stay with them, and they are spiritual as well. So when I was staying with them, I was doing daily card pulls, just for fun, to be like, what kind of day are we going to have today? And there was one time where I was doing the reading, and all of the cards that could be talking about children were coming out. It was like the Six of Cups, the Empress, the Sun, the Ten of Cups. They all have families and babies or maternal energy. And I was like, I know that the tarot is not telling me I'm going to have kids. I shared the video and I thought it was weird. And then the next time I visited them, which was several months later, they told me that they were pregnant. And then they were like, actually, when you did that reading, we had just found out that we were pregnant, but we hadn't told anyone yet. So when you were pulling those cards and being like, why is there all this message about like babies and children? We were kind of looking at each other like,
Oh my God, that's so cute. So it shows that sometimes the person you're directing the reading at may not always be accurate, but the message itself is.
That's the other thing. I guess this kind of goes into advice for someone who wants to do readings. A lot of the people watching do have knowledge in tarot. Even if you maybe feel confused about why a certain card is appearing, the person watching could know very well.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any testimonials to share, or just viewers or customers that have really been impacted by the reading in a positive way?
Yeah, I think my favorite thing is just when I hear that I've inspired someone to start a new venture or start a new project that they've been wanting to do, to know that I was part of that reassurance that made them feel like they could do it. That's like, I don't know if I told you, but it makes me happiest if someone says like, you inspired me to do XYZ. That's my favorite thing ever.
So, Carey, thank you so much for coming on. You're such a personable person, and I think
thank you.
That's why people are able to connect with you so well. You're so vulnerable and authentic, and so I'm so happy you came on.
Thank you. I'm so happy we got to do this, to come together. I'm visiting you right now. It's just like it all fell together so perfectly, and I'm so excited for what you're going to do with this show.
Thank you. That means everything to me. That really means everything to me. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
If you like today's episode, you know what to do. Like, subscribe. Carey, where can they find you?
I have YouTube, Kino Tarot, Kino Carey for the music, Kino Vlogs, which I never post on, but I have a few cute little travel videos there. Kino Readings on Instagram for tarot readings, and Kino Carey on Instagram for not tarot, for just me. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, and we hope to see you at the next one.
Thank you.
Bye.